Usually when we think about a physical boundary, there's like a visible line.
Right, like a fence or something.
Exactly, a fence, a brick wall, or, a laser tripwire in a spy movie. You cross it, the alarms go off, the dogs start barking. It's totally undeniable.
Yeah, you know exactly when you've crossed it.
Right. But today, we are looking at an invisible tripwire. Welcome to this deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are right in the middle of a puzzle. We're here to understand not just what the rules are, but how the hidden mechanics of those rules actually work in the real world. And today, we are exploring a legal problem that hinges entirely on an invisible, razor-thin line.
And, I mean, it is a line that can literally mean the difference between a few months in a local jail
Yeah.
and decades in a state penitentiary.
Exactly. The stakes could not be higher. We are talking about the boundary between a simple petty theft, which we call larceny, and a highly violent felony, which is robbery. Specifically, we're going to look at how the precise timing of a threat and this bizarre kind of invisible legal distinction between having custody of an item versus having possession of it just changes absolutely everything. So let's unpack this. Where do we even begin to draw that line?
Well, we begin by looking at how the courts have historically struggled to define exactly when a theft ends. Today, we're going to trace the evolution of this timing rule through three foundational precedents, the Mason, Durham, and Pritchard cases.
Okay.
And then we're going to apply everything we've learned to a principal modern case, which is Commonwealth v. Jones.
Perfect.
Yeah. By the end of this, we will give you a definitive framework to spot the difference between custody and possession so you can see exactly when that invisible tripwire is tripped.
I love that. A really clear roadmap. But before we get into the wild stories from these cases, we need our baseline. We need the ground rules. How does the law actually define robbery in the first place?
So the general rule at common law is straightforward on its face. Robbery is the taking, with intent to steal, of the personal property of another, from his person or in his presence, against his will, by violence or intimidation.
Okay. Taking property by force or threat. Sounds simple enough.
It does, until you introduce the critical timing element. This is the mechanism that changes everything. The rule is that the violence or intimidation must occur before or at the exact time of the taking.
At the exact time, okay.
Right, because if the violence happens like a split second after the taking is already entirely complete, it is legally not a robbery.
Wait, really? So if I steal something and then, I don't know, punch the owner on my way out, that's not a robbery?
Exactly. In that scenario, you have committed a larceny, the theft, followed by a completely separate assault. But because the violence didn't facilitate the actual taking of the property, you avoid the robbery charge entirely.
That sounds like a massive loophole.
It really is.
Let's see how that strict timing rule actually plays out. You brought this first case, Mason v. Commonwealth. Let's analyze Mason v. Commonwealth. First, what are the legally dispositive facts?
Okay, so it's a fascinating sequence of events. The accused man goes up to a storefront and smashes the display window. He reaches in, picks up a portable television set, and hands it through the broken glass to his confederate who is standing on the sidewalk outside the store.
Okay, so a classic smash and grab.
Right, but here's the twist. The store owner was actually inside the store, hiding directly behind the display window in the dark.
You're kidding. He was just lurking there watching this happen.
He was. And right after the accused hands the TV to his buddy outside, the owner pops up and strikes the accused with a wooden board.
Good for him.
Well, the accused doesn't take kindly to that. He grabs a heavy portable radio and hurls it directly at the owner. Then, he pulls out a pistol and fires 4 shots at the owner.
Whoa. Okay, that escalated instantly. So he steals a TV, throws a heavy object at the owner's head, and shoots at him 4 times. To a normal person on the street, that is obviously an armed robbery. But what is the core legal issue here?
The core issue the court had to decide was whether that extreme violence, the throwing of the radio and the shooting, was concurrent with the taking of the television. Did they happen at the same time, thereby elevating the crime to a robbery?
Okay, so what rule of law did the court apply? Please state the full black-letter rule and break it down into its testable elements.
The court applied the strict concurrence rule. The rule has 3 distinct elements. First, an act of taking and carrying away the property, what the law calls asportation. Second, an act of violence or intimidation. And third, a concurrence in time between that taking and the violence.
Thank you. Now for the court's elemental analysis. Let's walk through this step by step. How did the court apply the first element, the act of taking?
So the rule is that taking and asportation are complete the moment the property is legally severed from the owner's possession. Applying that to Mason, the court said the taking of the television was absolutely completed the exact split second the TV left the accused's arms and was successfully secured by his accomplice outside. That severed the owner's possession. So element 1, the taking, is met.
Understood. Now, what about the second element, the act of violence?
This was a textbook demonstration of deadly force. He threw a radio and fired a gun at the owner. So element 2 is easily met.
Right. And the third element, concurrence in time.
And this is where the prosecution's entire robbery case falls apart. The court looked at the timeline meticulously. The taking entirely preceded the violence. The accused had already succeeded in severing the merchandise from the owner's possession. That invisible boundary was crossed when the TV went out the window.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the violence was introduced only after the property was gone. So the required concurrence in time just didn't exist. Element 3 is not met.
And after analyzing all the elements, what was the court's final conclusion?
The court held the evidence was legally insufficient to support a robbery conviction. This guy committed a larceny, and then he committed a completely separate aggravated assault. But he did not commit a robbery.
That is wild. Mason makes it seem like if you can just, toss the goods to a buddy or get them out the door first, you basically guarantee you won't catch a robbery charge no matter how much you shoot up the place afterward.
It's basically a twisted game of hot potato.
Exactly. But surely this doesn't work if the thief doesn't get a clean getaway, right? What if you catch them red-handed while they're still gathering the goods? Let's analyze Durham v. Commonwealth. First, what are the legally dispositive facts?
This is a much darker case. Thieves break into a home to commit a burglary and steal valuables. But while they are inside the house, actively carrying out the theft, the lawful occupants, a mother and her daughter, arrive home and surprise them.
Oh, a nightmare scenario.
It truly is.
Yeah.
To eliminate the interference and make off with the goods, the thieves attack. They stab both the mother and the daughter to death.
That is horrific. Legally speaking, they didn't go in planning to kill anyone, just to steal. But when interrupted, they escalated. And what was the core legal issue?
The legal issue is whether a thief's intent can change momentarily from larceny to robbery in order to overcome interference with an ongoing taking.
What rule of law did the court apply? Please state the full black-letter rule and break it down into its testable elements.
They apply the interposition rule. The rule has 3 elements. First, the owner or custodian interposes themselves to prevent the taking. Second, force or violence is used to overcome that opposition. And third, the force is concurrent or concomitant with an ongoing taking.
Thank you. Now for the court's elemental analysis. Let's walk through this step by step. How did the court apply the first element, interposition?
Well, the victims physically appeared on the scene inside their own home while the burglary was happening, which interrupted the theft. By doing so, they legally interpose themselves. Element 1 is met.
Understood. Now what about the second element, force to overcome?
The thieves could have just dropped the stuff and run. Instead, they chose to employ lethal force, specifically to eliminate the interference so the theft could proceed. So element 2 is met.
And the third element, concurrence.
Because in Durham, the taking was continuing. The thieves had not yet severed the property from the home. The court ruled that an intent to commit robbery doesn't have to exist for a specific duration. It can change momentarily. Because the lethal force was concurrent with the ongoing taking, element 3 is met.
And after analyzing all the elements, what was the court's final conclusion?
The court concluded that the thieves' actions constituted robbery. Their initial intent to commit larceny transformed into robbery the exact moment they used force.
Okay, I follow the logic. Durham makes sense because it's an ongoing burglary inside a house. The stuff hasn't left the building yet, but I have to push back here. What happens if the thief already has the goods in their hands, legitimately, but just hasn't paid for them yet? Whose property is it at that exact second? Let's analyze Pritchard v. Commonwealth. First, what are the legally dispositive facts?
We are at a gas station. A gas station proprietor pumps gasoline directly into Pritchard's car tank. When asked for payment, Pritchard, instead of handing over cash, produces a firearm and cocks it.
Classic. Keep the change.
Right. The terrified owner runs away, and Pritchard drives off without paying.
And what was the core legal issue?
The core issue is whether the owner surrendered legal possession of the gas when he pumped it into the car, making the later firearm threat separate from the taking.
What rule of law did the court apply? Please state the full black-letter rule and break it down into its testable elements.
The court applied the custody versus possession doctrine. The rule has 3 elements. First, the accused receives bare physical custody of the property. Second, the owner retains constructive possession pending a condition, like payment. And third, force is used to convert that custody into possession.
Thank you. Now for the court's elemental analysis. Let's walk through this step by step. How did the court apply the first element, bare custody?
Pritchard had the gasoline in his tank, giving him physical control over the liquid. But the court said this only granted him bare custody, not legal title. Element 1 is met.
Understood. Now, what about the second element, constructive possession?
The proprietor retained constructive possession of the gas pending the condition of payment. His legal right wasn't severed just because the liquid was resting in Pritchard's tank. Element 2 is met.
And the third element, conversion via force.
Pritchard used intimidation, cocking the gun, to subdue the owner's ability to resist. This legally converted his mere custody into actual possession. The force preceded this legal conversion, so element 3 is met.
And after analyzing all the elements, what was the court's final conclusion?
The court concluded that Pritchard committed robbery, not petite larceny. The force finalized the taking.
Okay, let's pause right here. Custody versus possession is highly abstract, and I want to make sure you, the listener, feel this in your bones. I want to present a visceral, honestly, kind of gross hypothetical to really ground this mechanism.
Oh boy, I am bracing myself.
Imagine you are at an ultra-expensive seafood restaurant.
Okay.
You grab a live, dripping, slimy lobster from the display tank and shove it directly down your pants.
That's a terrible idea.
Right. Legally and physically. But at this moment, you have physical control of that wet lobster. But based on the Pritchard gas tank case, you only have custody, right? The restaurant still has constructive possession.
Correct, because you haven't paid for it.
So you walk toward the door, the maitre d' steps in and blocks the exit. Sir, I need the lobster. To escape, you spit hot clam chowder directly into the maitre d's eyes.
Oh my gosh.
You run out the door. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, but according to Pritchard, by spitting that soup, you converted your gross custody into possession. You just committed armed robbery with soup and a pants lobster, right?
Your hypothetical is profoundly disturbing, but legally, it is flawless. Shoving the lobster in your pants gives you bare custody. The restaurant retains constructive possession. When the maitre d' blocks the door, he legally interposes himself. By spitting the hot soup, you use violence to overcome his opposition, converting your bare custody into full possession. It is absolutely a robbery.
Excellent. I don't think anyone is ever going to forget the mechanics of the pants lobster. And the crazy thing is, that exact absurd scenario connects perfectly to our main case today, just with footwear instead of seafood. Let's analyze our final case, Commonwealth v. Jones. First, what are the legally dispositive facts?
So Jones put a pair of boots down his pants in a shoe carnival. The store manager watched him on the CCTV video cameras, followed him outside, and confronted him about 10 feet into the parking lot. Jones pulled a gun, told the manager back off, and fled.
And what was the core legal issue?
Did Jones complete the larceny by concealing the boots and leaving the store property? Or did the robbery occur when he produced the gun in the parking lot?
What rule of law did the court apply? Please state the full black-letter rule and break it down into its testable elements.
They applied a synthesis of Durham, which is continuing larceny, and Pritchard, which is custody versus possession. The rule has 3 elements. First, the accused has mere custody, while the owner retains constructive possession. Second, the owner interposes during a continuing larceny. And third, the accused uses force to convert custody to possession.
Thank you. Now for the court's elemental analysis. Let's walk through this step by step. How did the court apply the first element, custody versus possession?
Just like the gas tank or the lobster, shoving boots in his pants gave Jones bare custody. But the manager, observing him on camera, retained constructive possession. Element 1 is met.
Understood. Now what about the second element, interposition during continuing larceny?
The trial court actually found the larceny was continuing. The manager approached Jones in the parking lot to retrieve the unpaid boots, legally interposing himself. The theft wasn't over just because he crossed the doorway. Element 2 is met.
And the third element, conversion via force.
Jones introduced a firearm to overcome the manager's opposition before his custody legally converted to possession. This transformed the crime from a continuing larceny to a robbery. Element 3 is met.
And after analyzing all the elements, what was the court's final conclusion?
The Supreme Court of Virginia reversed the Court of Appeals, reinstating Jones's convictions for robbery and use of a firearm. The tripwire was tripped in the parking lot.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of highly technical legal ground today. I want you to synthesize this entire module into an actionable tool for the listener's exam prep. What is the ultimate diagnostic checklist for issue spotting robbery versus larceny?
If you want to master this, here is your 4-step diagnostic framework. Apply these strictly in order.
Identify the timeline. You must map the exact second the goods were moved against the exact second force was used.
Assess custody versus possession. Did the thief merely conceal the item, getting custody? Or did they completely sever it from the owner's domain, getting possession, like in Mason?
Right.
Step 3. Spot the interposition. Did the owner or custodian step in to stop the theft while the larceny was still legally continuing?
Evaluate the conversion. Was the force used specifically to convert bare custody into permanent possession by overcoming the owner's resistance? If so, it's a robbery.
That is incredibly clear. Timeline, custody, interposition, conversion. So, what is the provocative final thought for a listener to chew on?
I want to leave you with a puzzle to mull over. In Jones, constructive possession extended 10 feet into the parking lot. But ask yourself, where does that invisible tether finally snap? If the manager followed Jones across the street
Yeah.
or onto the highway, at what exact geographic inch does a store's constructive possession end, turning a drawn gun from a robbery into a mere assault? Keep that question in mind as you outline.
That is the perfect question to end on. We started by talking about an invisible tripwire, and as we've seen, that wire isn't painted on the floor. It stretches, it bends, and it moves. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. Keep questioning the boundaries, and we'll see you next time.